Welcome to this tutorial. I'm glad you are joining me in this particular tutorial on CSS fundamentals and stylings. Now, first of all, we need to define what CSS is. Basically, CSS is an acronym that stands for the cascading style sheet. When you mean by cascading, means that there is some priorities that are being given in each and every step. Therefore, we'll be looking at how you can be able to write the CSS and how the priorities are going to be defined when you continue running that particular program or that particular file. Style sheet basically stands for the styles that are going to be included in your HTML web page. Now, it is a programming language that basically styles a document written in a markup language. So we have already talked about the markup language at HTML. We have got another markup language called we have also another markup language called XML. XML is also another markup language. All these are markup language, and therefore CSS can easily be implemented in these two languages. Now, what is the difference between HTML and CSS? So the first one is that as HTML is a markup language that is used to create a static web page, while CSS is the one that is responsible for presentation of the documents, how to make the document more appealing. Now, when you talk about HTML again, HTML deals with, it consists of the tags surrounding the content. For example, here we have got a p tag. A p tag basically in HTML means a paragraph. So inside the paragraph, we are having the text or the content. So you are seeing that this particular content, welcome to Ubi Tech Ego, it has been wrapped inside the HTML tags. Now, when you come to CSS, you realize that it consists of the selectors which succeed the declaration mark. So for example, here we have a selector called the header, and here we have the declaration mark. So these are the declaration marks that enable you to be able to give the property and also the value, which is the background color to be green, and so on and so forth. Now, coming down to HTML cannot be used inside the CSS. So remember, we want to style the HTML. Therefore, HTML cannot be found within the CSS file. But the opposite is true, because CSS needs to be used in HTML. The last thing that you need to bear in mind is that you use HTML to build the structure of the web page, but you use CSS to make the web page more presentable. As I've already explained earlier, is that CSS is basically used to make the document more presentable to the audience or to the people who will be visiting your web page. Now, when you go to how to add CSS, so there are three main ways that you can be able to add CSS to your HTML. The first one is the inline CSS. So with the inline CSS, in this case, you target the single element. Here you target the single element, and therefore the style that is available to all the tags, whatever you have specified, is going to be used in all the tags that you have in your HTML. Now, in this particular case also, you need to be able to apply the style keyword in each and every element, which is very tedious. So if you want to style anything, you need to always write inside the opening tag, you need to include the style keyword. Now, down here, you can be able to see we have an example that HTML, we have the element HTML. Now, I want to style HTML. So what am I supposed to do? I need to include the keyword style, then equal sign, then the opening quotation mark. Inside the double quotation marks, that is where you're going to put in the property and the value. So you can see here I've already written there the property and the value. Now, that is all about the inline CSS. Now, when you go to the second one, we have got the second one called the internal CSS. With the internal CSS, basically in this case, you target a single web page. It is only applied to a single web page or a document. Now, in this particular case, you can see here we have got the HTML tags, we have the head tags. basically when you talk about internal CSS, that particular code or that particular styling goes inside the head tags. So you can see the same code that was written in inline CSS is being applied in internal CSS, but now the syntax is a little bit different, whereby we are having the selector, which is our HTML, and then inside these particular tags, the opening curly bracket and the closing curly bracket, we have the property and then the value. But now you can see in this particular case, we are writing this particular code inside the head tags. That is very important, that can be able to make us to differentiate between the two. Then the next one is what we call the external CSS. With the external CSS in this particular case, you create a separate file that contains CSS attributes or contain CSS code, so that this particular file can be used in the entire website. You don't need to be able to create in each and every line, or in that particular same web page, you need to create the CSS in each and every web page. So why don't you just have a separate CSS file that contain all the CSS code, so that it can be easier for you even to maintain the website. So in this particular case, we are targeting the entire website. Now, how do you include or how do you link up the external CSS with the HTML file? Basically, in this case, you need to have the opening angle bracket, and then you need to have the word link. Then you have the relationship written in short form rel into equal sign and then into double quotation mark style sheet. So basically, this is the relationship of this particular document to the HTML file. Then you need also to give us the location. Where is the file coming from? Now, you can see here we have the double quotation marks, the opening double quotation mark and the closing double quotation mark. But in this particular case, we are using /. Basically, when you mean /, basically it means the current directory or the current folder. Now, in the current folder, there is another file that we have created. We call it styles.css. That is where our styling or our styling code has been written. That is very important for us to be able to capture in this particular case. Now, here we have got an example of HTML. HTML. Basically, we have been able to create an external file called styles.css, and you can see the same way we have been able to describe above. It is the same way we have been able to write down here. So after that, you are having one element called the paragraph tag. Inside that particular paragraph tag, we have a content called I'm coding CSS. Now, I want to style this particular part by creating a separate file called styles.css, and inside there, I'm going to reference this particular selector element. This is the selector called P, and inside that P, I'm using the paragraph color, which is blue. So this is the property and this is the value. We'll be able to look at an exercise, and then you'll be able to get more information as we go further. Now, when you go to